All right, now we're going to take a few minutes to sit down with the PAC and talk to them about their experience they've had so far in the Purpose Activation Committee. They had to bring their own chairs. All right, so let's get it kicked off. We'll get started with how long you've been on the PAC. Andrea?
Hi, how is everybody doing today? I've actually been on the PAC since November 2018, since its inception, and it's been a great experience.
Awesome. Let's go through and talk a little bit about why did you choose to join the PAC?
Well, I was actually intrigued by the idea. They talked about a purpose committee, and I thought that it was a good way to kind of ignite purpose within the company. I didn't know what it was really about, but I thought it was a great concept.
Awesome. Renee?
I also have been on the committee since it began in October of last year following our leadership summit. And the reason why I joined, I think I was one of the first people to raise my hand when Charlie asked if we would be interested in it, was throughout that leadership summit, I felt a huge void, not understanding what my purpose was. So as phenomenal as that summit was, I left that day feeling like there was a big hole in me. And I raised my hand because I felt like one of my expectations of the committee was I would be able to find my own individual purpose, which would help me make our company stronger.
That's awesome, Renee. Thank you. Michael?
Well, I feel very underprepared because I don't have my notes. But no, I joined the Purpose Activation Committee from the beginning. The sole reason why I joined is because I genuinely believe in our company's purpose statement. I believe it because of the impact this company's had on my life and my direction of my life. I believe it because of the lives I've seen it change. And I know that this is the truth. It's not just something that we throw on a banner, but we're really changing people's lives here. Both myself and other examples that I've seen throughout this company.
Thanks, Michael. Lynn?
I too have been on the committee since its inception in the fall of 2018. And I joined the committee because I really didn't understand purpose. I know what I personally believe purpose is, but I wasn't sure how that would work out in the workplace. It has been nothing like I imagined. It's been exponentially more. So I'm excited for everyone to dig deeper today and learn a little bit more practical ways to explore your personal purpose.
Great. James?
I joined the PAC committee on my 9th day of work. Because Lynn Knowles is in it. That was just an added benefit. No, I really just wanted to meet people from different groups within the organization, and a group of leaders getting together to purposefully think through and try and improve everyone's workday, everyone's life. I mean, that's a win-win, so it's just been great to be on it.
That's great. So, Lynn, you were talking a moment ago about your expectations and kind of what your experience has been. Could you share a little bit more, like what your expectations about activating purpose were and what you've kind of uncovered through the last 10 months?
Well, it's been a lot more personal and vulnerable than I ever imagined. I don't tell you that to scare you. I'm telling you that because that's really where the connection happens. I have gotten to know everyone on this committee, some of whom I work with on a daily basis. Jimmy. Others, Charlie, that I do not. Renee, I do not. And so to get to know people and what really motivates them, what's real in their lives, and to really stop. I mean, we all my friend Brian Curran says, busier than a one-armed man hanging wallpaper or whatever he says. But we're all busy. But to stop and connect with our teammates, it makes all the difference in the world.
That's great. Thank you. Renee, same question. You came in looking for some answers. How has your experience been?
It's just been unbelievable. I really thought that what we were going to do is figure out how to make Furnishing Life's Best Memories more than just a statement so that everybody could kind of feel it. But what I didn't expect was the personal journey that we would each be taking individually, the amount of work and studying that would be involved, how it was going to transform me. Each and every meeting, every single week, we learned something that we can take out to you guys and make our company stronger and better and get to know each other better. It's just been probably one of the best experiences of my life.
That's great. So thinking about those times that we meet together weekly, who has a story or a memorable moment from kind of our experience with the PAC?
Jimmy's got something to say.
Well, just a few of the fun exercises that we do that do open you up to some vulnerability. Talking about your childhood or talking about your family and friends. Yeah, it doesn't sound like, oh wow, that's a hoot, but it is. I look forward to the meeting every week, and just to share experiences and a lot of times learn from others. It's fun. It's been a great weekly meeting to have.
That's great. So Renee, when did you see the PAC committee coming together? I mean, we've been together now for about 9 or 10 months. When did you see kind of the group gelling?
I really think the beginning of the year, I would say specifically February, when we really started talking about Orange Crush 3 and making that purposeful spaces and the breakout sessions and really starting to plan for OC3 and how that was going to bring purpose out. Our team had gotten a little bit smaller, but I think we became more intimate with each other and more vulnerable, like everybody keeps saying, more authentic. But realizing what impact we could make through Orange Crush was when I feel like we really kind of got it together.
That's awesome. Going back to Joey Ryman's book, The Story of Purpose, Lynn, how did that book inform your perspective on organizational purpose?
It was in one of Charlie's slides earlier today, but the whole be, do, say. I mean, people have said it before, you can put the purpose statement on a banner, but are you really doing that and putting that at the forefront of every decision that you make, every interaction that you have? Like, what kind of memory are you making for every person that you come into contact with?
Fantastic. And Andrea, what have been some of your most memorable readings or podcasts that we've kind of shared as a group?
All right, I'm going to say this. I really enjoyed The Invisible Leader by Zach. It was a very good read. It was my favorite book. But the story that intrigued me most in that book, there was a story about and he brought it up before, about Mary, the janitor, and how she did something. When she retired, she came back to a job on a lower level just because of what she can give back to those students. And what she did was she was being impactful and impacting lives. And just doing one thing or saying something to someone can have a valuable impact on the rest of their lives. I think that part of the book really intrigued me and made me think about myself and what I can do on a daily basis to bring purpose to someone else's life.
That's great. Michael, what has been your favorite reading or podcast?
So also The Invisible Leader, Kevin Kinman and I were discussing a part of that book where it talks about a quarterback for the University of Colorado, I think his name was Sal, and how they went from a not-so-good team to the next season winning the championship, but what changed is Sal actually passed away. and that became the invisible leader for that team. It was something that was pulling that team through. Not too long after that, I saw the direct impact of that in my store, and it's crazy that book came into my life, that discussion happened weeks before that happened, and that just really impacted me.
That's great. Renee, what have you learned from your study of purpose around the science of purpose?
There's a lot of data out there. You think a lot of people feel like, I think both of our speakers today have mentioned that people think it's just fluffy and not really important. And it's amazing how much research has been done and all the data that is out there proving the importance of it. And just to kind of bring it into perspective, if you guys know the Business Roundtable, that is a organization of elite CEOs from Apple and from Amazon and from General Motors. And just recently, they released their new purpose statement, and it's all about making their employees and the community and customers as important, if not more important, than their shareholders. And if these kind of leaders are realizing how imperative it is to have purpose in an organization, you can only imagine that it's true. And to think that we're leaps ahead of those companies here at Broad River is pretty amazing.
So with obviously a lot of conversation about purpose in business today, including the story you were just talking about, Jimmy, can you kind of explain maybe more from what you've learned, why do you see it gaining steam in business, and you know, what are people seeking? Is this what they're seeking?
I think that it's the bigger picture. I think that it comes down to just look at our exercises before. Right? We came away from it not with talking about a paycheck or talking about what KPI we nailed and made it. We talked about those human relationships, those interactions, how you can help someone else out. It's the best that there is, right? So I think that people are realizing, I want to show up at a place where every single day, 40% of my life, everyone else cares. And I care about them too. And we can get a lot more done and have some fun doing it if we come in with that mindset and just put a big value on purpose and put a big value on taking care of each other.
That's great.
It just makes a big difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think everyone's starting to see it.
That's great. So Lynn, you know, we just talked a moment ago about identity with Justin. How do you connect purpose with identity?
Well, I think the biggest factor is authenticity. And that's where you have to get real with yourself. I have to digest everything that you said, Justin. That was so important and so rich. And I mean, another buzzword out there in this community and in this realm is EQ, emotional intelligence. And I think that's something that I would say the entire committee has gained through this process because we've been challenging ourselves to answer some of these questions. I don't know if I answered your question, but
I feel great about it. I think you did a great job. I think we're good. So thinking about Zach's book, Renee, I know we've talked about it a little bit already, but what were some of your favorite takeaways or learnings?
So the biggest learning for me, going back to the Leadership Summit and hearing Jean Lunger speak and Joey speak and everybody else speak, was there was a big life event that kind of helped transform them to realizing what their purpose was. And I couldn't think of a big event or something that had happened to me that would be transform me. And what I'm learning through Zach's book is the critical incident doesn't have to be huge. It's just something that inspires you or influenced you to realize what your talents are. So, I mean, there's so many takeaways from the book. It's like Charlie said earlier, every single page is, pretty much every sentence is underlined, highlighted, and starred, and you have to go through it so many times because every time you do, you learn something different. But for me, the biggest takeaway from his book is that there's something special and unique in each one of us, and it doesn't have to be a big critical event that influences you. And that's just, I've learned my purpose through his book and realized that as small as I thought it was, it's not.
There's purpose for everyone and it's meaningful.
Yes,
You don't have to have that dynamic moment. That's
Thank you.
great.
Yes.
So, we've got all of, or a significant majority of our leaders here today. And, a big part of this is how can we help you introduce purpose or help make a more purposeful experience for you and your teams. Can you share, we'll start with Michael, how can a leader, through your eyes, how can a leader help someone on his or her team connect their personal purpose to the company's purpose?
I think we just have to get past KPI reports. And I think we have to connect with the individual and really just understand them, understand what motivates them, understand how their individual purpose connects to our company's purpose, and just guide them and be real and be vulnerable. I think sometimes as leaders, I think the most awkward thing about the Purpose Activation Committee is being vulnerable to your peers. And, we've all probably shed tears in these meetings or on these calls, and it's encouraged. And I think we have to encourage that same thing from the people in our stores. We have to encourage them to be vulnerable, encourage them to be real. Don't give me the answer that I want to hear. Tell me how this really makes you feel and how we can connect this to our company's purpose. I think it just as leaders, that's so important, that our teams really feel that they can be themselves and not just who you want them to be that day, but genuinely be who they are.
Thank you, Michael. That's great. Lynn, I know you've shared kind of some stories around this same thing. How have you kind of taken that personal purpose and kind of started even some activities around with your team?
Well, we did a great exercise recommended in Zach's book, and the question he asks is, what impact have you made on the world today? And you think, I just got here. I didn't do much. And so he challenges us to take the most, I'm going to use the word mundane, that's probably not a good word, but a very small task that you do on a daily basis, put that on one end of the spectrum, and then your global impact on the other end of the timeline. And what we did in the merchandising team, we picked a task and then we mapped out exactly how that went down the line from us to the stores, so on and so forth, to there's a kid sleeping in a bed today because of something that we did. And so that laddering exercise, I guess that's a similar thing, life-changing. I encourage everyone to do that, and you can do that today.
Yeah, I love it. It's something that was not necessarily quick, but something you could do any day, that you set aside that time to make a difference. That's fantastic. So I'd like to go through everybody here for this next question, so we can start down with James. So in thinking about your best memories from this past year so far, what stands out the most?
I definitely think at OC3 when we had the breakout sessions, I think it's still talked about today. It just put such a lasting memory in your mind, and just walking around day to day and seeing people that I shared with and shared with me, and just having that connection, it's huge. It really makes a difference.
That's great. Thank you. Lynn?
I'm just going to say that purpose is a priority. And so the fact that we start our days and talk about what our purpose is and how we're going to make an impact for a kid who needs a bed tonight. I mean, it takes some learning and some practice and some focus and some intentionality, but just doing that changes the entire course of the day. So,
Fantastic. Michael?
So kind of what Lynn said, I think the company's just made so many big strides in connecting our purpose and how intentional everything is. So a standout moment for me was OC3. I've been around since the original Orange Crush, and I'll tell you, it used to be a month or week or months of preparation and anxiety and fearfulness of your business plan being picked apart. And OC3, I really could tell the change and the pivot that the company took to where now we were excited, we were engaging, our team was involved. It became our purposeful spaces. How can we activate the office, the guest service counter? How can we activate the break room? And it became something that everyone was excited about instead of an, oh no, Orange Crush is in 7 days, what are we going to do? It was like, man, when is this thing coming? So it's just every little thing that we've done since we've launched this committee has been so intentional if you really look at it. And OC3 was a big standout for me.
That's great.
I hate to be repetitive and say OC3, but that is it for me. But one of the main reasons is I had the pleasure of being able to be a part of the corporate campus OC3 when we had a lot of people from operations, and going back to thinking that some of these jobs are. You assume people are just there for the paycheck, right? And that's the attitude that we have. And meeting these guys and getting to do a breakout session with them was just eye-opening, that at every level, every person wants to be a part of something bigger. They're pulled to do something bigger. They feel it. They just haven't really been given the opportunity or asked the right questions. And I got to make a few relationships that day that have continued since, and just to be a part of something like that and realize that an entire department of people wants to play the same game you're playing and wants to study and learn just like you was pretty eye-opening.
Thanks, Renee.
Okay, I'm going to say OC3 too, because it was really an awesome experience, and having an opportunity, again, I think I said it before, having an opportunity to meet people that I wouldn't normally speak to, and hearing their stories, and being able to share that, and crying together, and being able to encourage people. It was an amazing experience. I believe on a corporate level, we got a chance to coordinate with people from the DC and HC and all over the company, and it really gave us an opportunity to cross the lines. So OC3.
You can keep that. All right, so with OC3, recently we had our Week of Purpose. So Renee, kind of tell us about the impact of that to you.
It was just nice knowing that it was everybody could be involved. It wasn't just our committee or just the leaders. I love when I can see the ripple effect taking hold and reaching to all corners of our company. So that week was really important to me, to know that everybody had equal opportunity to participate, to see the level of engagement, to see the excitement. It just lets us know that there's such a need for us to do more and more of that kind of thing. So it was exciting to plan it and then kind of watch it take a life of its own.
That's great. So, we also, the PAC took over the leadership message this summer. So, Michael, tell us a little bit about that, kind of experience for you. We've talked a lot about vulnerability and kind of in those rooms, but I think the messages kind of took that to a whole nother level with sharing with the company.
Yeah, so I think it's just challenged us to share some of the things we feel and we may talk about with our spouse at home, or we may talk about with a family member or a close friend, but to just share those thoughts with the organization and to grow and develop ourselves as leaders. It's just given us a voice, and that's what's ultimately changed. It's not Focus Friday or Truth Tuesday. Here's what's going on in the organization. Now we get to hear from other individuals in the company that we're interested to hear from. So that's been really cool.
Great, James.
I think that just the more that you can just connect with those that you're working around and find really that blend between someone that you work with and a friend, and opening up those channels have just been eye-opening. I'll use Lynn again. If Lynn calls and needs something, it's not just, oh, hey, it's somebody from merchandising. It's Lynn. What's Lynn need? You know, and you can definitely look at your lens coming into work every day is definitely different.
Okay, great. Lynn, does your work matter?
Yes, it does.
How?
It matters because kids aren't sleeping on the floor at night.
Michael, does your work matter?
Can I say hell yes, it matters?
Absolutely, you can.
Absolutely.
How?
So, I did. I'm sorry. So, like Glenn said, I just want to get kids off the floor, man. That's what I'm about, and I love the fact that they've given us an opportunity to do that. But also just developing people, trying to find those people that went through similar things that I went through, and maybe didn't always have the path, and helping those people find their path. So, yes, it matters.
That's great. Now this is just the beginning, right? Purpose doesn't end today with this, with Purpose 828. So what's next for the PAC? What's next for activating purpose at Broad River? Renee.
I tried to give it away. I tried hard. Honestly, I think what's next for us is just getting everybody that's in this room comfortable with it and started on their journey of studying and learning and becoming different leaders. I'm not going to say better because we're pretty fantastic, but just even better and different. And then helping you take it to your teams until we get it to every single person in the building, in this building and all of our buildings, as we grow and as we develop, just knowing that our committee is helping every single person that works here, which means you're going to take it to your homes, your families, your friends, out into the community, and the ripple effect of what we do is just endless. And there is no end. There's just next and next and next.
That's great. In fact, that kind of leads into the next thought or question. And, our organizational wake or the butterfly effect, how do you see the company making an impact, and yes, we can go to Michael, beyond itself through purpose?
We just have to continue doing what we're doing. When we get an opportunity to get kids off the floor, when we get an opportunity to raise money for St. Jude's, it can't be just another private event. We can't treat it like another private event. Whenever we are going through and we're selling sleep on these 1-for-1s or these Bam Gam events, it can't just be another day where we're trying to sell another mattress. Because I think when we all rally around it and we see the impact of what it can do, it's only going to open up more ideas. Well, what else can we do? And that's the power. But it will never have the power that it could have if everyone in this room doesn't genuinely get behind what we're doing. You have to get behind it. You can't just nod your head. You've got to get behind what we're doing, because then it's going to be someone you didn't expect. They're going to have an idea in your store, and it's going to transform what we're doing. And we're going to have another impact on our community. So I think we just have to act. I think we have to act, and then that'll get us more opportunities.
Okay, great. So let's go to James. How is activating purpose making a difference within Broad River as a whole? And then more specifically, your department.
I think that it's definitely going to bring people together and just help with the collaboration of the organization, help the overall feel as you walk in the door. I think that everyone's been to that job where you pull in the parking lot and you have that pit in your stomach, like, I just don't open this door right now. It would be the complete opposite of that. You pull in, you know that you're around people that care, that have the same goals and focus, and I just think that it would overall bring up just the joy that you have when you come to work every day, and it just makes a huge impact.
That's great. Now, Lynn, we talked a minute ago about kind of some of the activities you've brought to your department. So how has that kind of activation made a difference with your team and your department?
We're just excited about what we're doing, even if what we're doing isn't fun. Does that make sense? I mean, you can get excited about really silly things that you think may not be important. Everything that we do impacts someone else in this organization. I'm going back to Joey Ryman's question about the book. We live in an ecosystem. We all have to get along. We all have to work together to be successful. And what I do impacts what Michael does, and what Michael does impacts what Andrea does, and what James does impacts all of us. So just when you are mindful of that and have an awareness of that, it's a game changer.
Fantastic. So some of the things that came up earlier are the vulnerability and the personal impact of going through the process, even though, it's about, we show up for the business reason, right? Andrea, I'd like to hear from you. We've talked a little bit about the impact to Broad River as a whole and specific departments, but how is kind of going through this process of activating purpose made an impact on your personal life?
It made me look at my individual purpose, or how I connect to the company, or why I'm here. I mean, I do have a story of how I came here, but going through this process has really helped self-evaluate a lot of the different areas of my life, to create more of a connection to the company, and as well as in my home life.
Fantastic. Now, Renee, that was one of the things that was really important to you. Can you tell us how that's been an impact on your life going through activating purpose?
Yeah, it's given me a very clear kind of path that I feel like I'm being pulled in changing my style of communication and time management, and just letting relationships breathe, and realizing that a relationship can be someone that you're going to meet one time and one time only, but you can still impact their life. It doesn't have to be a family member or a lifelong friend. And realizing that every person that you come in contact with every single day gives you the opportunity to impact their life and create the ripple effect, and you'll hear me talk about that a lot, has been just eye-opening to me. It's made me so much more self-aware. I start my day differently every day. I end it differently every day. So it
Sounds like pretty significant.
Yeah, very impactful.
Awesome. And, part of what we're doing today, again, is to arm leaders, right, to give you tools and resources. And I'd like everyone to answer this next question. And, we come from different backgrounds, different departments, different experiences. What advice would you give as folks are taking notes or thinking about, what does this mean to me? What does this mean to my department? What does this mean to my actions as they leave later today? What advice would you give a leader to activate purpose?
I would always say, as a leader, always start with self-evaluation. Look at who you are first, because it always comes from you to your team. So it's important to have that self-evaluation first.
Great. Renee?
Can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. What advice would you give the leaders that we have here today to help them activate purpose?
I've said it several times, but I would definitely listen to some podcasts, watch a few videos, do some reading so that you really understand what it is to you, and then just ask questions and listen. It's just a lot of listening, getting to know that person, and then finding what motivates them. And I think a lot of times we'd be surprised.
Great.
So I think you just have to be honest with yourself first, and then you have to be honest with your team. So first you have to discover what your purpose is, and that's what I've gotten the most out of this Purpose Activation Committee is what's interesting about it, it's never the first thing that you write down. Your mind tells you what you think your purpose is, but if you can get past that point, you'll find it. And Once you find it, you have to share it with everyone. And if they see you being genuine and they believe in what you're doing, that's going to trigger something that makes them want to go through that same discovery process. So I think you've got to be honest with yourself. Don't just go with the first answer. Everyone's going to say, you know, my kids are my purpose, right? But is that really your purpose? You've got to really find yourself first.
I'm going to go with commitment. You have to be committed to the journey, because you don't arrive. We're all created. It's there. You just have to be committed to putting words to it. And the readings are incredible, no matter from what direction they come, but just commit to it today, and it will transform you, your family. I mean, I'm a different parent some days, most days, because of this. So I say commit.
I'd say just realize you're worth the effort and the time to put into this. Start there, and then look around at all the people that you work with that help you reach your goals and help the company reach their goals, and realize they're worth it too. So just start with yourself. Do not allow yourself with the easy answers. Constantly question yourself and question your answers, and you are worth the effort, and you got to go in 2 feet, because it's so easy just to bow out with those easy one-offs and just jump off and say, "Yep, I'm done. Check that box." It really doesn't have an ending. It's just a journey. So hop on the purpose train here and get busy. Get busy.
So taking that to the next step, talking about asking, questions or spending a lot of time. Everyone on this panel spent a lot of time, whether it's been in group or by yourself, asking yourselves questions. What might be one question? I'd love to hear from everyone again. Just one question as you're thinking about, for the leaders in this room, to ask themselves to enact purpose in their own lives. What would be a question that helped you maybe get to your point, Renee, or that came up, Michael, after you got your first answer? How did you get to that second answer? So let's start it off. James, you've got the mic.
I think it's a wonderful question. How would you answer it?
Ooh. Very nice. Yeah, no, I see what you're doing, James.
Hey, you can drop it now.
So I think for me, it's as much the mindset of kind of being honest with the areas that I'm uncomfortable. So where do I find myself? There was a comment made earlier by Justin about where I may be in conflict with myself, and asking about those moments where I don't feel authentic, or it rubs me the wrong way. And I think that's taken me down a journey that's provided clarity.
Thank you.
I don't believe you answered the question.
I don't believe so either.
With what Justin was talking about, who am I? Who am I? If purpose flows from authentic identity, and a lot of you guys answered, I'm just listening to you, being self-aware. Andrea said self-aware. Renee talked about being self-aware and using that, and Michael talked about it as well. And so, who am I? Who do I see myself as? Maybe the second question is, how do others see me? And maybe from there you start to form, like, what is your identity? What is my identity? And is it different than what I want it to be? Might be a start. There you go, Jimmy.
Great answer.
Great question.
Lynn?
I'm going to go with I'm going to go with Zach's question in the book about what have you done to impact the world or to do to make a greater impact today? And that really knocked me down at first, and it was very intimidating. And I went into the meeting thinking, this is not going to go well today because I'm not sure about this. But if you really spend some time by yourself, without the phone, without the noise, and think about it, you will be amazed at what happens when you can dream what the possibilities are. Just allow yourself that space.
That's great.
So earlier we discovered, oftentimes our purpose, or most of the time, it involves other people. So I think a very clear question is, how will this decision impact others? Every decision you make, how will this decision impact others? And then does that outcome that you see align with your purpose?
That's great.
It's all kind of been said, so I don't want to be redundant, but to Charlie's point, who am I? And I remember several years ago, Chad Spencer came and spoke to us, did a fireside chat, and a question that he asked that changed my life was, what do you think people would say at your funeral? And what do you want them to say at your funeral? And I think those two questions really make you think about who you are and what you're doing.
So I'm not sure if this is the same thing, but everyone is saying, who am I? And I often ask, why am I here? Same thing, similar, but I believe there's like a self-evaluation process, and your why, right? Am I saying it right? Your why, your how, and your what, right? And I think just asking, why am I here? Why do I exist? And what is my ultimate purpose? And that's the question.
That's great.
Okay.
So now that we've kind of pulled back the curtain a little bit with what's been going on in the PAC for almost a year now, I'd love to be able to open it up just for a couple of questions. Maybe some of the things that were said brought up a question in you, and you'd like to kind of find out more, or we'll start off with Jeff.
So, do each of you feel that you've already found your authentic identity, or is this something you strive for every day, and it's not a mountaintop that you reach, it's something you keep striving to attain?
Who'd like to answer that? James?
Yeah, it's definitely something that to work towards. There are, even still, there are weeks that you'll go through, you think you got your answers all figured out, and then you'll read a couple chapters and just go, okay, I might need to revisit this or rethink it. Which is fun yet frustrating at the same time. So that's when we say definitely go in 2 feet ready to go. It's because there will be those moments that doubt or that other thought comes in, and you're going, I had it last week. Now I got to revisit it. But that's part of that journey. That's part of the process.
Great, thank you. Who else has questions? Pam?
Hold on, Pam. Stepping on things? Okay. Since you all have been, thank you, going through this journey, is there like a turning point moment where you really became aware of purpose as the center of identifying yourself, and an action occurred as a result of that, or a change occurred with your teams or your family or what have you?
I'm going to label it more like an evolution. It's like the unfolding of a scroll. Like you kind of think you know who you are, but then the more you read and the challenging questions come that you didn't think to ask yourself, and you're like, okay, so how does that play into what my thinking was? And maybe it is something different. This is a silly example, but in the imperative thing, I would have never guessed that I had a societal driver. I'm more one-on-one. I'm very relational. But the more we learn about it, it's like, oh, yeah, when I feel more fulfilled. So it's, to answer your question, it's like there's something new that comes up almost every week. You go, oh, yeah, that too. It's like your toolbox just gets fuller and fuller.
In addition to that, Pam, I think part of it for me is as you're reading and immersing yourself in new material, it's like when you go out and you buy a new car. And what do you see? You see that car everywhere around you, right? Yeah. And it's no different when you're listening to podcasts about purpose or reading purpose or doing really anything. And what you find is in those moments of self-reflection or even self-talk, you now have new information to work with. So your decision you're making or the way you're viewing a situation, sometimes there can be a significant, if you've introduced new significant ideas, your perspective or starting point may be very new and very different, or it may just be those small changes that happen over time. But I think that's the best way I could relate. Absolutely. Justin.
Whenever you roll out a new initiative like this, I would imagine that there sometimes can be some that are resistant or even those who passively sabotage. They say this, but they really don't support it. Possibly without giving a name.
What's happening here?
Can you share with me and the group how you overcame someone eventually? What strategy you used to onboard someone who maybe didn't adopt this mindset into this process?
This sounds like a Charlie question.
Yeah, so I think that you don't. I don't think purpose can be forced on anyone. I think it has to come naturally. I think if you're going to be a critic, if you're going to look poorly upon us seeking purpose, then this isn't for you. So I would say you don't until that person opens their mind. Because you can't force someone, because then it's not natural, then it's meaningless. But I think that even the naysayers are kind of seeing the change. And that's what's really cool, and you've got to let that occur naturally.
I also think that you just have to continue to set the example, even though that they may not feel it or see it now. If you continuously set the example and tell stories, something will click. It's just in all of us. I mean, purpose is in all of us. We might just be realizing it different times and in different ways. But if we keep telling the stories and we keep setting the examples, I believe that everybody can be on board.
Will?
Have any of you arrived at a personal purpose statement? And if you're comfortable sharing, kind of walking us through what that is in your journey of kind of discovery and building that statement?
So, a lot of you know that I sing, right? So, I created a purpose statement that said, I was created to bring music or sound to people across all nations, to encourage and to inspire. So that was similar to what my purpose statement was. I didn't do one for work, but I did one for my music. Okay.
I'm thinking of what Justin said, where we perform for likes, and thinking about in order for us to have purpose truly flow, we have to be our authentic selves. What was a moment that you identified that you were performing for a like, and what was that conversation with yourself saying that I need to stop this? How did you do it?
Could you repeat the question?
So thinking about Justin's conversation to us, in order for purpose to truly flow, we have to know our authentic self. And part of the issue is the labels and performing for likes. So with the Purpose Activation Committee, have you hit that moment where you've identified that you have been living through a label or performing for likes? And if you have, when was that moment where you said, I'm stopping and I'm being who I am right now, and I'm just going to proceed forward and push through it.
I think once we sort of started being open with each other, that was a turning point for me. And I think what you learn about your teammates is that they know what your intentions are. And so you don't have to put a mask on, and you don't have to do something different, that you're giving your best every day. Heather shared this one of the first weeks, the Nordstrom welcome packet says, use your best judgment. That to me was very impactful because I know I'm using my best judgment as best I can every day. And so I just feel like knowing that and knowing that my actions are to furnish life's best memories, as long as I'm doing that, I think I'm good. And if it doesn't work out, doesn't work out.
Yeah, I'll take that. So whenever I was doing the leadership message for the Currents, I stared at a computer and I thought about what would people like to read? What are people going to hit the like button? How am I going to get likes while I'm typing this thing up? Like, what message is going to impact people? And I could not figure out what to type. I could not figure out what to say. And then finally I said, screw it, I'm just going to write how I feel. And that was one of those times where I was conflicted. I wanted to do what I thought other people would like, and I couldn't produce. I was like paralyzed. I couldn't do anything. So it wasn't until I said, you know what, I'm just going to type how I feel about this subject, and hopefully everybody likes it. And that was a time that I went through that.
I'll share to wrap it up. So I think for me, in talking about authenticity, that at times I'm going to assume what outcomes are going to be and then filter that information based on that approval that I'm looking for from somebody else. And I think that in going through this process, I'd say just even in the last 2 months, I've decided to, again, trust the safe spaces that are there and the relationships that you have, and just be yourself, not just when it's convenient or when it's comfortable, but to be willing to go out on that limb. And I'll tell you, I think there's nothing more positive than realizing that those fears are false, that they're the things your brain's telling you. And at the end of the day, there's not real. And there's real empowerment coming from the other side of taking that risk. Any final questions? Steve, take us home.
Okay, it sounds like it's a journey, but at some point, like, you come up with your phase 1 definition of who you are, and then it sounds like you put it back through some filters and come up with a phase 2, and so on and so on. Can you give us just a general timeline of, how long it took you to come up with a phase 1 and then a phase 2 type definition of who you are?
Steve, that's like a massive question, man.
Oh, sorry.
I guess that's a great final one. Anyone want to take that?
I think you have to be okay with not knowing what that is, and it may be something that you get quickly. It may take you days, months, years to figure that out. But I think you have to be okay with either scenario. I think it's going to be different for you than it was for me, than it was for Renee. And I think you also have to be okay with it changing. Like, just like we change as people, so can our purpose. So if you try to clearly define it and peg it down, sometimes you're not open to what you're really feeling and what your purpose can really be.
I think it's like being a student, and you really have to do the work, and it just individually that's going to change how quickly you're going to pick it up. But I think ultimately your purpose and who you are, I don't think that changes a whole lot. I think our goals and strategies change based on the situations we're in, whether it be individually or organizationally. But I think who you are pretty much stays the same. You just, you learn how to activate it differently.
Can I chip in on this one? and to just bring us home for lunch. I think we're going to break for lunch. I'll go back to what Justin talked about. We've got some recommended resources. I would recommend The Purpose Path by Nicholas Pierce to answer that question. And I talked a little bit about it as well, but like, you're a parent, you're a dad, and Justin talked about being a dad and a parent. And as leaders, we're also stewards of those who we lead. And I would just encourage us, we have to protect those who we steward as a parent, as a leader, their identity. Protect it, cocoon it. Like, their authentic identity. One, that it matters. One, that they're a walking miracle. One, that they were uniquely created for a purpose and a reason. And the fact that they're here is just, it matters. So Zach talked a lot about the purposeful work and being purposeful and how to ladder that up and down. But like your identity, protect that. And so like when we talk about like what our personal purpose is, it's like, hey, like you exist. You didn't just happen upon being here. And don't let because your behaviors flow from your identity, your purpose flows from your identity, and who you are from your identity. So if you see yourself, like his son was going down this path with the welled up eyes, I got the vivid picture of, I'm a bad person, I'm gonna misbehave. And he just stopped it. No, I'm not going to parent him like that. He's not a bad person. If someone does a written wrong, I just can't write sales correctly, or I can't close deals, or I can't sell mattresses, or I can't. That's not your identity. So I just think you have to protect your identity, and if you can hold on to your identity daily and protect that, I think you can weather any storm, and it's worth protecting, and everyone does matter, and we all were created for a reason, and it's no happenstance that we just happened upon here. So maybe phase one. Nicholas Pierce's book, The Purpose Path, is a great part of that journey. All right. You got this?
Thank you guys for all of your great questions. Thank you to our Purpose Activation Committee, Christian. Thank you for moderating.